in a proxy war, the rules are somewhat unwritten, and it seems as if over the past years, the rules, unwritten rules of proxy war has continuously been changed and shifted upon. That is, what was considered to be acceptable, again in 2022, is we crossed that so long ago. I always make the point with Biden saying that F-16s, that's not possible. That would mean World War III.
Right.
Compare that to today, when you have, for example, American contractors launching American ATACMS guided by American satellites, hitting targets picked by American intelligence agents in Ukraine, part of a wider war planning by U.S. generals working out of Germany. I mean, this is I had a talk with John Mersheimer on this channel as well. He made the point as well. We crossed out of a proxy war a long time ago. We are fighting a direct war against the Russians. We made a decision to take the war from Ukraine into Russian territory. Now, the voices growing in Moscow appears to say that, why should they bring a war to us? Why shouldn't we also bring the war to European territory then? This is a bit ludicrous that one side, by they can essentially attack us and claiming that it's it's just your Ukrainian defending themselves, as opposed to the NATO countries using Ukraine as a proxy. So. But do you see also foreign involvement in this? I ask because back in June, you remember the Russian FSB said that the attack on Russia's nuclear deterrent, that is nuclear bombers, was done with the British support. Do you
Yes.
have
Oh,
you seen anything?
I not only believe that the British intelligence was involved with this, I cannot rule out the possibility that CIA as well. And I raise that because there are still elements in the CIA that are working against Donald Trump, and that I think have more of a vested interest in keeping this war in Ukraine going. And it just, one of the reasons I say that is there recently a woman who, we were friends once anyway, I thought. She was in my career trainee class. So when I joined the CIA in September of 1985, I was one of 53 other CIA officers, men and women. And we spent basically a year getting special training, getting special orientation to the agency. Her name is Susan Miller. And I was just scanning the TV about 4 weeks ago, and all of a sudden, there she is. She's on Afshin Ratanzi's program. And one of his producers had reached out to her, but she agreed to go on his program. But then prior to that, she was on a CNN program in July of this year, in which it turns out she was the one who was in charge of the team that drafted the intelligence assessment accusing Russia of meddling and interfering in the U.S. elections, the one that came out in January of 2017 that Tulsi Gabbard has debunked. And here was Susan on CNN defending it and said, "Oh yeah, we had all this evidence." What a joke. My point is, she's not out there on her own doing this. I guarantee it. She was not the type of person who aspired for public recognition or to naturally gravitate towards getting on media. She's been put out there, and she's been put out there in a way that she's directly opposing the Trump administration on this. So that's why I say it's a long answer coming back to, I cannot rule out the fact that there are elements within the CIA that are intent. They say, screw Trump. We're not going to abandon the Ukrainians. We're going to continue to supply and help them. And if taking out Putin is one of those ways to do it, we'll do that. I cannot rule that out.
Because such a daring attack, also in the middle of the talks between Zelensky and Trump,
Right.
it's hard to see how this is not related to derailing any efforts to put an end to this war. But again, someone is just trying to do it here. Now, one of course hears from the Ukrainian side that this is just the Russians, that they are looking for an excuse to walk away from talks and start bombing, intensifying. I was going to ask how you assess this accusation, but maybe
Yeah.
you're
Yeah. So, well, I mean, what's the evidence that the Russians, quote, want to walk away? They've already made their position very clear. They are uncompromising on it, and it is those 5 territories. Crimea, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Luhansk, Donetsk. They're ours. They belong to Russia, Russia Federation. They're not going back. We're not making any concessions on that. Now, yeah, is there a harder position than that? Yeah. The harder position is we're also going to take Dnipropetrovsk, Nikolaev, Odessa, Poltava, and Sumy, and screw you and the horse you rode in on. Yeah, that would be a harder position. But Putin's already made that clear that if they don't take the deal that's on the table now, that is going to be the next deal. That will be tougher. So Russia doesn't need an excuse to go do that. They're already doing it. That's what's so crazy about, oh yeah, they're just trying to come up with an excuse and not to continue with the negotiations. No, the Russians said they're willing to negotiate, but they've laid out their terms. Putin did it on June 14th, 2024, and he's repeated it ad nauseum for more than a year now. And the West still doesn't get it. So that's why this notion that it was all, this was Russia trying to create a pretext so it doesn't have to negotiate, that they're willing to negotiate, but on their terms. And they haven't deviated from that at all.
So, given that we're now faced with this massive escalation, the Russians are indicating that this is, well, not just indicating, saying flat out that we will retaliate. This is we see this, with extreme severity, and we already picked our targets. So, what do you think Russia will actually do now? Will they go
Well,
after you? You said the possibility, of course, of declaring a war, which also means, of course, they would be fighting very differently. But how else? Well, what else do you think might be in the cards?
well, they've got they've been hesitant to use the Orushnik. They've used the Orushnik missile up at one point. The Orushnik gives them, let's call it, the destructive capability of a nuclear weapon without the radiation and the collateral damage. It's like being able to launch, let's say a conventional nuclear bomb is more like a shotgun shell for birdshot, that when you shoot it, it spreads out. It's tough to concentrate. You can kill in a very precise area. The Orushnik is more like a sniper's bullet. It's very precise. So I could see them destroying the intelligence headquarters, both the civilian and military intelligence headquarters, for starters. If they've got know of any particular bases where there are NATO personnel or British personnel, that they could destroy that, hit that with an Orushnik. So it's going to be more than just launching a new number of missiles and drones and fabs, because they're doing that every day. It's tough to tell. Is that escalation? That one day you're going to drop 800, next day you drop 1,000. Yeah, well, that's 200 more. But I think they're going to go after a target that's going to really send a message, and it may include killing some of the top political officials and/or military leaders. Up to this point, Russia has not done that. Ukraine has done it over and over and over and over. Russia hasn't. This may be where Russia says, okay, the gloves are now off. All of these people are targets, and they'll start killing them. But it's I don't think the Russians were just being issuing an idle threat. They don't do that. When they say that this is, they've already picked the time, place, and method of retaliation. So they've given some thought to this beforehand, that, within a plan, if we have to escalate, this is the next step up. And that's where we're at, I think.
If this was the only escalation, miscalculation, if you will, it would be one thing, but it kind of builds into all these other waves we've seen especially over the past months. We've seen, especially since the summertime, when the Ukrainian army began to very evidently fall apart. We've seen everything from all these attacks, not just on Russian refineries, but on civilian vessels. And it's just, and then they all kind of have the same thing in common. That is, that they will demonstrate, will suggest an escalation in the war, but also it's very hard to imagine many of these things being done without external support, that is, from
Sure.
some NATO countries. But again, my concern is always, as we go up the escalation ladder, at what point will the Russians see that not responding will be more dangerous than responding in terms of risking a direct war? But do you think that a direct war could, I guess, be an undesirable consequence of this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I think it is. Um, Germany, France, and the UK in particular, are playing with nuclear fire, potentially. Um, what I find so odd, and you're closer to it than I am by virtue of where you live, but the real this what appears to be the sincere, genuine belief on the part of many, if not most, European leaders that Russia really is weak militarily, that its economy is fragile and not very productive, and that Putin is desperate to find to get out of this, and or that Russia really is intent upon conquering Europe. Now, the entire narrative there is contradictory, because if the Russian military is so weak, then how could they conquer Europe? And so they have to figure out what the narrative. Either Russia is so strong and powerful it's going to gobble up Europe, or it's weak and inept, and therefore we can threaten it. And I don't understand. Those are two contradictory positions that are held simultaneously by, like I said, many European leaders, particularly Germany, France, and the UK. And so out of that kind of false perception, they can make decisions that will stumble them into a war. This is not going to be a conscious, we want to go to war necessarily, but because once you convince yourself of something that's not true and you act on it, bad things can follow. It's like if I came to you and said, "Hey, Glenn, I got this pair of bird wings. I wanted you to put it on, wave your arms real fast, and I'm going to push you off a 50-story building. You'll fly, trust me." And it turns out that I'm not an aerodynamic engineer. And you would find that the laws of gravity take over real quick. So no matter what I told you and how much you believed it, the underlying facts on it were not true. And that's the situation we face right now. That I was just listening to Doug McGregor a little bit ago, and he said that Putin has now mobilized an additional 700,000 reservists. And on top of that, announced 140,000 new conscripts. That's on top of a ground force that's in Ukraine already at around 750,000. So right now, you're looking at the active ground force for Russia approaching 2 million men. They're preparing. They are preparing for the contingency of going to war with Europe. That's what's taking place. Europe continues to talk trash, but I don't see them actually making substantive preparations to, put up actions that match their words.